want to tell you about one more prophet, a man named Ezekiel. Now, God led Ezekiel to a valley full of bones. It was a valley that was a battlefield from 70 years before. It was the last stand before the people went into exile. This valley of bones was a sign of defeat, of loss, of death. All the people at this point who were in exile grew up in exile. None of them had been born in freedom. And so God leads Ezekiel among those bones, in and around them, this depressing place. The sun's been beating down on these bones for 70 years, and they're bleached or white and dry. And God says to Ezekiel, "Mortal, can these bones live?" And Ezekiel says, "Oh Lord, you know." He didn't want to talk back to God. He wasn't going to say no. Of course, he wasn't going to say yes, because it's impossible that these bones could live after so long. He'd given up hope. And so God says, "Ezekiel, prophesy to these bones. Tell them to hear the word of the Lord, that I will make breath to enter them, and they shall live." I imagine Ezekiel drew his own deep breath, and he prophesied. He prophesied to them about God. And as he did so, there was a noise around him. There was a clattering, a rattling of those bones beginning to jiggle and move. Those bones clattered as they came back together. Pretty soon, sinews began to connect those bones and hold them together, and muscles grew around them. And soon they were covered with flesh. But they were just lifeless at that point. There was no breath in them. And so God says, "Ezekiel, prophesy to the wind." And so Ezekiel prophesied, "Come from the four winds, O breath, breathe on them that they may live." And just like back at that bank of the river in creation, when God was playing in the mud, making a vessel, and God breathed into it, God did it again. God breathed life into these bones. What was once dead came alive again, and they stood on their feet, a vast multitude. Ezekiel looked on in amazement, and God said, "Mortal, these bones are the whole house of Israel. You might think that you are dried up. You might think that your hope is lost, that God has abandoned you, and there's no life left in you. But God is waking you up again. And God will put his spirit within you, and you shall live. And you shall know that the Lord has spoken and is acting." Indeed, God was doing a new thing. As God has been doing from the very beginning of creation, God is making us new, recreating. And God was making the people of Judah and Israel new again, new people, new community, giving them new life. God takes that old covenant and God gives them a new covenant, a new promise. God gives God's word. And so now we turn to the New Testament, where God's word becomes flesh and lives among us.